Hello, and thank you for joining me for another episode of the Finish More Music podcast. So this is a proper guerrilla episode in that this is the first episode that we've ever recorded that's had zero preparation going into it. And I'm going to tell you all about why, because it's tied up in the subject matter of this podcast. But first of all, I'm going to introduce my more than capable co-host, Mr. DJ Rob Nicholson. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you very much. How are you doing?
Yes, good, or not so good, as we're about to uncover as we dive into this episode. So the reason there's not much prep in this is because this was the first time that it actually looked like we might not have an episode. We've never, ever missed a beat since we started. And it's something that, we're proud of. It's really a great thing to have where you're never dropping the ball, and it makes you want to always be consistent and no matter what, strive to get the podcast out. And this was one of those times where it was really touch and go more than ever before. And the reason for that is due to me having a problem so far undiagnosed with one of my ears, which we'll dive into, and being literally unable to record the podcast. And today's the first day I've been in a position that I could do it. And we were like, no, we're definitely going to do it. Rob and I were going to jump on, we're going to talk this out, because I've approached what's happened to me, and it's been very sudden, like some loss of hearing and tinnitus and pain and all sorts of things has hit me really suddenly. I've approached it in a certain way that I think could be valuable for other people who are also struggling, not just with their hearing, but obviously when we're predominantly talking to music producers and creatives, that's something that's going to be super, super valuable to want to hold on to in a special way when it's a crux of not just your hearing, but your creative output and what you do and who you are and who you identify as in the world. I've approached it in a certain way that has helped me that I think might help other people as well. So that's kind of the road that we're going to go down. I know that Rob's got kind of questions along the way, because I haven't spoken to Rob about this. I've been completely like incognito and kind of out of it for the last couple of weeks. So Rob's got the opportunity to grill me as we kind of weave our way through this. But I suppose I'll start at the top with what actually happened, and then we'll kind of move from there. 2 weeks back, Mrs. M's second 39th birthday, as we've been calling it. She insisted on that, second 39th birthday. And we hire a boat to go out on the lake in Brasilia. Beautiful lake, beautiful sunny day with friends we haven't seen for years. And we were having some beers and like jumping in the water, splashing around, all of that good stuff. Nothing too raucous or, out of hand. I'm not a fantastic swimmer. I'm not like diving down, doing anything impressive or backflips or any of that stuff. But somewhere, I assume, something happened on that day that meant when I woke up the next morning, I had a pain in my left ear and a ringing every time that I spoke at anything other than a very moderate volume or any other sound that anyone else kind of made. And this sense that something was potentially blocking my ear. And I tried all the various things that you do, from blowing your nose to sort of putting pressure in your ear gently and all of that stuff, and it wouldn't shift. And I thought, well, what we'll do is this was on the Friday, it will probably clear over the weekend and we'll reassess on the Monday. But it didn't clear in any way, shape or form over the weekend. And on the Monday afternoon, we were getting on the plane to fly home. So long haul flight, pressure changes, all of that gear. So we went to an ENT specialist in Brazil, very fortunate. Anna's parents were able to fix that up. And he said, probably water trauma, looked in the ear, poked about, all of that good stuff, no perforated eardrums. Here's a big old dose of steroids, away you go, enjoy yourself, and it will probably be gone in a week. Not that keen on the idea of you getting on a plane, but in all honesty, it won't cause you any harm. It's probably just going to prolong any kind of recovery period. And so we got on the plane, did all the pressure stuff and all the popping and the aggravation that came with it, got back, had a good sleep and woke up fresh, and then realized that it now gotten to the point where not only was there the ringing when I was speaking, the sound of it being full, it being very uncomfortable, but the minute I tried to do some work, I now couldn't hear fully in my left ear above about 2K. Now, it's for those of you who are the music producers out there, let's call it probably a bit less than a 6 dB per octave high cut filter. So it's not like annihilating my hearing, but as it gets right up to the top end, it's quite significant. And obviously, when you do the job that I do, which is centered around listening to music, analyzing music, giving people feedback on their music, or if indeed it's your creative passion and endeavor, you're going to notice that even though the audiologist considers it to be mild, to me, it's bloody severe. I mean, you'll know yourself, Rob, if you were to put that kind of an EQ curve on the left-hand side of your speakers or your headphones, you'd notice it, right?
Yeah, I think I'd just be walking sideways, like the balance would seem off from the hearing.
That is totally it as well, because luckily I don't have any balance issues with it, but it just constantly feels weird. It's an ever-present kind of odd thing. So when I discovered this, I've woken up and gone, oh, now this is ramped up in seriousness in my mind. Right, we're going to go to an audiologist, which we did, and they said you need to go straight to A&E, which we did, and then we go in there, and some GP guy in there who's not an ENT specialist at all said, well, I don't know, pretty much put his hands up and said, I don't know anything about this. I'll get on the call to an ENT department. There's a really good one at St George's in London, and he was good as gold. Fair play to him. 30 minutes later he came back and said, though that big dose of steroids you're on, they want to put a big dose on top of the big dose, and like he literally said to me, like, there's no way I'd have you on this dose when I walked in there. And then he speaks to them and they want a higher dose, and apparently it's twofold. Number one, it's the highest or the strongest anti-inflammatory, he said, that there is that you can have. So that would help if there was any sort of swelling, but also it's about the sensory side of your hearing. Apparently the steroids, when you have hearing loss due to sensory problems, i.e. all of the mechanics of your ear seem to be functioning correctly, but it's the signal going to your brain. Apparently this is something that really kickstarts it, and it's just like, bosh. And that's why I've been out of the game, not because of my ears, but because I've been on these big donkey biscuits, 16 a day of these things in one go. Like, it's a big old, it's your breakfast basically. Yeah, absolutely, like off my chops on these things, and I'm unable to concentrate. And that's why we almost missed the podcast, because yesterday was the first day I was off of the steroids, but I was still off my chops. I still was really struggling to concentrate, and just every time you got your mind on something, you sort of be daydreaming off on something else, or at least that was what was going on with me. And today's the first day that I've sort of felt a bit of gusto and thought, right, come on, let's do it. And like, here we are, basically. So, Rob, any questions about it?
My first thought is that potentially you could be making some great music in this steroid-induced days. I don't know what kind of journeys you'd go on there, but no, I'm just super fascinated to hear about this, because I think this is something that happens and can easily happen to anybody. And I know people. I've never had that kind of issue. I've had colds when I've been on an airplane, and then coming into land, the pain that suddenly builds with the pressure there has been, at the first time that happened was super unexpected, and I thought I was going to damage my hearing just from that alone. And I think, that is a possibility. But my sister was scuba diving with a head cold. She did something to her ears, which was a fairly long-term issue. And I've had friends who've, I think, again, from swimming, going in the sea, they've had ear infections and so on. So it is something that can easily, you can easily get these things happen to you. And obviously there are potential problems if you are a music producer. So I'm just super interested to hear how this kind of journey pans out for you. You know, what you've been doing, what you've been trying to do, and then where this will take you with recovery from it.
Yeah, I mean, you've made some really good points. Actually, something I'll loop back round to at the end of this, which is this idea that these things can just happen to you out of the blue, because that ultimately is what's happened here. You can go swimming and do anything a squillion times, and I even had it a few years back where I was literally had something similar, same ear. So I don't know if there's some kind of connection. I mean, it's been an entire 2 years now where I had something similar where it just went out of nowhere and I was doing nothing then, and I recovered within a few days, but we're now kind of weeks down the line. So in terms of the process and how this has panned out has been kind of interesting. And this is the bit that I hope some people may find useful if they find themselves in similar circumstances. The first thing is it's scary. There's no getting away from that. I mean, from the minute that I woke up and realized something was not right with my ear because of what I do, there's an immediate, oh, hang on a minute, what's going on here? And there's a level of anxiety that immediately accompanied it, which then you sort of reason away. But when we then land back in the UK and we're now, talking whatever it is, 5-6 days. So it isn't just a cursory thing that's disappearing at the click of a finger. And now all of a sudden there's the hearing side. And even now I've come off the steroids, there's now tinnitus arrived, which I didn't have before. So this is this ever changing thing that's going on. There's obviously a level of emotion that comes with this. And the first thing that I always try to do with this is to get out of the emotion, and that's to say that see it for what it is and don't get caught up in all the stories and the rumination and the propping up of the emotions, because you can start to attach all sorts of meanings and make it worse and really get lost in the whole thing. And anyone who meditates will know you can sit down and just sit back from this for a moment and examine the what is and just be with it, and then is to process the emotion, which I think is so important, because it's so tempting to try and put I say a brave face on things, but for yourself is to just be like, oh, I'll brush that under the carpet. And in my experience, it's best to say, okay, this is pretty scary. This is I'm a bit anxious about this, and to let those feelings happen, a bit of grief, a bit of sorrow, a bit of whatever's coming, and just be with that and be okay to process that. And that was sort of the first step for me. And I think I'm going to tie something into that a little bit at this point, because I've just jumped off a call as well with one of the guys in FMN Plus, my mastermind group, Michael, and he is also suffering with a problem with one of his ears. It wasn't why we were talking. It was actually I was coaching him. And one of the challenges that I think you can also come up with is the feeling that there may not necessarily be much help that's arriving anytime soon. And I'll explain what I mean by this. I was very lucky, obviously, to have an ENT specialist look at my ear out in Brazil. When we got back here, we booked an audiologist, fine. Then we went to A&E, and it was a GP, and he got on the phone to an ENT person. And from there, you go into the system in the NHS. That is, you're now in the system. They're going to call you. Have they? No. They're going to write to you. Have they? No. So then it's like, okay, so there's a number of options open to you. But you go, okay, well, I need to talk to my GP because they're the hub of all the knowledge about me and what's happened in the past. And I'm not having any go at anyone in the NHS. I have no idea what's going on behind the scenes there. But just from my experience, and Michael kind of mirrored this, so I know I'm not alone in this. In the last 2 years, things seem to be progressively going downhill. And what I mean by that is that a couple of years ago, obviously we had the whole COVID thing came in, and I had an ear problem at the time. And I phoned up the GP, and it was like, right, this is serious. It's a sudden loss of hearing. It's this is your job. Come in. Yes, you're sitting on the naughty chair at the end of the corridor because it's COVID and you're on your own, but we are processing people. Then that went to no, nobody comes in the surgery now, it's all on the phone. Now I haven't even been able to speak to a single person at the GP practice. Now what it is you fill out a form online and it says, well, we get back to you in 4 hours. 4 hours later, they get back to you to say all of the slots have been taken. You need to fill out a form again tomorrow. So this isn't carrying over. You're not in a queue. Fastest finger first doing this tomorrow. And so there's no feedback or anything coming from people. And so I think there's another thing there where I totally understand that people could feel quite alone in this, because it is quite scary. It feels like it's in your head, it's going on, it's a real thing. You don't, is it permanent? What is it? There isn't a diagnosis, there's no one around. And I think there's a choice point that we have at that moment again, which is to get caught up in that bubble of life's not fair, which it isn't, universal truth, better accept it now, to get caught up in that bubble, or to operate from the place of, okay, what can I take personal responsibility and accountability for here? Because the second that we say, and I could be sitting going, oh, the doctor's this and the this, and I could moan and blame and complain. And if I do it, I've lost because I've given them all my power. The minute I say it's on the doctor, it's on the specialist, it's on the person to fix this out. And of course, they've got a duty of care and a responsibility somewhere in there. But the minute I say it's your fault, it's on you, and I'm going to wait for you to fix it, is the minute I've given away my power. I'm now wallowing around here in self-pity at their mercy. And so one of the things that I always try to do is go, okay, how do I now shift this to put the ball back in my court? What can I be responsible for? What can I do about this? And so there's multiple kind of strings to this, I guess. The first one is we say, okay, there's the medical side of things, and I can continue and will continue to pursue that. So we've phoned up like everybody that I could think of phoning up. I spoke to a bunch of people that I know, producers, DJs, people in the industry. Who do you know? Have you had any problems? Do you know people who've had problems? Like, who can help? How can I be proactive about this? Got names, went to see another ENT specialist here. So there's another kind of thread going on the medical side, and that's going to take the time it's going to take, and we can apply the pressure we can apply to get that moving. But that's like a thing over there now. Okay, great. What else can I take personal responsibility for? What's worked for other people? What research can I do? Who can help me with the research? What routines are there? YouTube, there's loads of stuff on there. You can find loads of things that people are doing, breathing exercises, different things they're trying, stuff to take their mind off it, self-care routines, exercise, healthy eating. So I went out and said, okay, let's build me a routine that I can follow every single day. I don't know. I don't know. I can't say that this is going to fix me, but I can say that if I'm not giving it a shot, my chances are definitely going to be going down in some way, shape or form. So let's go about that every day, and let's be in integrity to it. I can do these exercises, eat this stuff, drink this stuff, take these vitamins, use this oil, whatever it might be. And I'll do that religiously every single day. And that thing is now in my control. And when I'm in integrity to it, such an important word, when I'm in integrity to it, then a magic happens. Because when you say you're going to do something and you do it, there's a kind of a positivity and motivation and energy that you get that helps to propel you forward, and helps you as well with these balancing out of these emotions as well. We want to process all of them. But if we're sitting there going, oh, poor me, everyone's against me, the world's broken, no one's helping, why has this happened to me? That's unfair. Where's it taking us? It's really not taking us anywhere, right? So for me, it's been those outcome-based questions, like, who can help? What solutions might there be? How can I find out about this stuff? Who knows? Who do I trust? All of these different things that I could come up with. And then I think the other side of it is just the looking at the impact of it and saying, okay, so you go, oh, good blimey, something's up with your ear here. How are you going to give people feedback on their music? How's that going to work? How are you going to function day to day? Good questions to ask, better than saying, oh no, I'm done. That's it, I'm spent. As I said, the audiologist said that they consider it to be mild. So it's not end of the world stuff. It's bloody horrible, but it's not end of the world. And so I just was like, okay, let's open up Ableton. Let's build an EQ curve for my left ear. Let's balance the whole thing out. Great. It's not monstrous. It's not something that's such a boost that even though I can't hear it, it's blowing my eardrum out or something like that. But nevertheless, I've been able to balance it perfectly enough. And most of the problem is the super high frequencies, which in all honesty, if I'm commenting on someone's music at, whatever, 15K and above, they're probably doing pretty all right with their music, to be fair. But it was just looking at things like that. Okay, what is the actual impact of this? What's the what is, rather than what I might be telling myself the impact of this thing is? Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. And this is kind of making me think, like, taking a positive spin from the research you've done and everything you're trying. I know you've got your morning routine. You did a podcast on that. So potentially there are new ideas here which you can work into a morning routine, which goes beyond this particular issue, and potentially there are things you can be doing, to take care of your ears in the future, so that this, not necessarily this can't happen again, but maybe thinking about hearing damage. And we all listen to music too loud at some point, and we're in the studios every day, or at least many times a week. So protecting our hearing is something that we could bring some ideas into a daily routine to monitor that and just be mindful of it in some way. So I'm kind of interested at how you will, beyond, hopefully once you got this fixed, how you'll go from there with adding stuff to your daily routine and being careful with it.
Yeah, it's a good point. There's a couple of things that come to mind as well. What I didn't know and hadn't even considered, and this isn't daily routine stuff, but there are these earplugs that you can put in when you go swimming and so on and so forth. And certainly now I know I'm susceptible to this potentially. That would be an idea. But then what I found is there's actually eardrops that you can put in that people do recommend for your ears anyway, if you think you've got an infection. And at the moment, I'm not shoveling anything into my lug holes. I've decided that's one thing we'll leave for now. Let's let this play out its course a little bit more before I go putting anything in what I already think might be a problem. But there are actually eardrops that I think are like olive oil and tea tree oil that you can put in your ears before you go swimming, that are antibacterial and keep water out, that can be really useful. So just chucking that one out there. In terms of the daily routine, it's not so much about sort of ear protection, but one of the things that has come from this that I've found to be really invigorating is a bunch of exercises that you can do that are centered around draining your lymphatic system and your sinuses, which sounds pretty gruesome, but this is not it's all what is going on inside. And it's just literally simple movements that you can do, with your ears and stroking certain areas on your face. And it works to a T. I was absolutely blown away how you can wake up feeling potentially a little bit congested or stuffy in the morning, and within 5 minutes it's like you've had one of these super lozenges and you're standing at the top of a snowy hill breathing the air in. It's quite incredible. So there are definitely things that I will take that I think are maybe maintenance things, and I don't know whether they'd certainly help people, I think, if you were ill, but from a helping you to wake up in the morning and maybe potentially, I guess, looking after yourself point of view, they work really well. And they're easy things to find online as well. And they're literally 5 minutes. So when this is fixed, operating from the place of, come on, it's going to happen, I'll definitely carry that like extra 5 minutes on. And then, of course, there's just all the things of, taking care of yourself generally. And I think this is maybe a good point just to loop back to this idea of these things can come on quite suddenly. One of the things we've talked about in a previous podcast and you may know this better than I, Rob, we talked about this idea of lucky breaks. I can't remember the name of the podcast off the top of my head, but this idea that everybody has lucky breaks. Everyone has opportunities and incredible moments that come up in their life, but most people aren't ready to take them because they haven't done what needed to be done on a day-to-day basis to put themselves in the position. So we talked in the podcast about maybe you see somebody as a real mover and shaker in the industry and it's an opportunity to connect with them, but you don't because you lack self-confidence, because you haven't worked on that, or you haven't worked on your interpersonal skills in the past. Or maybe you do meet someone and talk to them and they say, hey, send us some music for the label, and you're far short because you haven't been showing up in the studio every day and operating at the level of a pro producer to be able to write that music. And I believe, it's just my belief, that these opportunities land all the way along our life, and we can either be ahead of the curve and take these when the opportunities come, or we can be behind and we just keep missing them. And those are the people who always go, it never happens to me. Oh, this so-and-so got lucky. So-and-so, whoever it is, whatever story you look at, whoever this so-and-so was who got lucky, they were always in an amazing position to take the opportunity.
Yeah,
you know, that's always the way. Like some band that got discovered, they were a kick-ass band when they got discovered. They weren't just banging about on pots and pans, you know. Now, of course, that makes obvious sense. We don't hear about all the people who missed the opportunities. But the point is, whenever someone says, oh, such and such was lucky, no, they weren't. They were in a position to take an opportunity like that. And this really got me thinking about this when this happened to my ear. And actually the flip side of this, how many people could be heading towards some point in their life where an opportunity that is theirs for the taking now gets pulled away? We talk about this thing of, you know, getting to the end of your life, but actually things can happen at any moment where we just aren't taking the opportunities that are presented to us. People who are, you know, maybe kicking back and going, oh, I'll just watch Netflix, or just poor old Netflix. I always pick on them on the podcast, but, you know, I'll just watch whatever, or I'll just kick back doing this, or I won't invest in myself this time round. You know, I'll do this next year. I'll let this one slide. I'm going to do this, that. I'm going to watch the football, whatever it might be. You can either have results or excuses, not both. And people who make excuses, well, just like you said, you never know when something like this could happen. And
yeah. So it's the don't put off. Sorry, yeah, don't put off until tomorrow what you can do today kind of viewpoint.
Yeah, absolutely. You've nailed it. And I think, you know, we all know these things of people who get far worse ailments and, you know, diseases and things than me with my tinnitus and my bad ear, you know, who then look at life in a totally different way. If they recover, it's like their life has magically appeared in front of their eyes and they never take things for granted again. And I know that, you know, it's easy to hear these things and to intellectualize them. And it's only when stuff like this happens that you go, oh, you know, and it made me think of that. It made me think, you know, okay, I can carry on going at the moment. I don't know if this will get worse. Who knows? But this could have been a situation where actually I completely lost my hearing in one ear. Imagine that.
Yeah, it's scary. I mean, of all the senses, you know, sight and sound are those two that, you know, can really get you worried when something starts going a bit fuzzy with them.
Yeah, totally. And so it really got me thinking of the inverse of this, taking the opportunity, and just do not rest on your laurels. I mean, you get one shot at life, and we'd all hope to live to a grand old age and be healthy, but we just don't know where the rug can get pulled under. It's not just in a health sense, like anything can happen at any moment. I mean, we look around the world at the things that are going on that of no, you know, people there, it's none of their doing whatsoever, all of a sudden find their lives turned upside down. You get one shot at it and you don't know how long that door is open for each one of those things. Step through the damn thing now. Don't waste your time.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I notice every day, I'm thinking about my hearing, and I notice you get those little tones going off in your ear, which I don't know if this is true, but I heard that it's that frequency like dying. You hear that beep in your ear, and that's the last time you're going to hear that particular frequency. It's the little hairs on the eardrum, wherever it is. No, the little, whatever it's called, the cochlea, is it? The spiral thing. When those, you got little hairs for each frequency, and it's those little things dying off. So
God, I didn't know that.
Maybe spoke about something you said before about the earplugs. That's something I'm very careful with now. I learned. I've now bought some very nice earplugs, which were expensive for earplugs, but definitely, I feel like it was a good investment for going to festivals and so on. But back in the day, years ago, I used to go clubbing pretty much every weekend. There was one, so back in Essex, I think it was in Rayleigh, the Pink Toothbrush. Shout out to them, fantastic club, but it was a very small venue, really loud. I think they a couple of times they had the on-you sound system set up in there, which so much sound pressure, and I used to worry about my hearing because I'd come away from that, and for 3 days I'd have that kind of very muted hearing. So I didn't have earplugs. I used to get little bits of tissue paper and stick them in my ears. And it got to the point one day up my hearing in one ear, had just gone. And I thought it would improve, and it turned out, I went to see the doctor. It turned out I just got all these little bits of tissue kind of rammed in there, with the earwax and so on. They sorted it out. They did the syringe to kind of blast out those little bits of paper. And I'll tell you, so that was, I think it had been over a week. I'd had no hearing in that ear. Once that was cleared, I had the best ever hearing. So I remember driving home from the doctor's, and I was hearing things in my right ear that were happening on the left-hand side better than I could hear from my left ear. It makes me think, maybe occasionally put some earplugs in, give your ears a rest for a week. Once you take them out, you'll be hearing all sorts.
Who knows? I love it. I mean, it's absolutely brilliant having toilet paper stuck in your ear while you're deaf.
My friends used to say to me, "What are you doing, Rod? That's crazy. That's bad for your ears." I was like, "No. It's fine. It's helping them."
Absolutely amazing. I love it. I mean, yeah, I've also got like the custom made earplugs for going out clubbing. Had them for absolutely years, and thoroughly recommend that people use those. And similar to you, I mean, at a young age, I didn't have anything of the sort, and we were always next to the biggest speaker stack we could, like having a great time. And who knows, what's happened here could be legacy of that. I'm leaning towards still there being some infection or something, but again, the problem is unless they can identify it immediately, I say the people that I've spoken to have obviously thought, well, it's more likely to be something else. So I don't know whether there'll be antibiotics or something else that's coming down the pipe with it. But I think one of the things that's going to be kind of interesting, and again, stepping outside of my own thought process with it, is being okay with the fact that maybe this is it now. Who knows? Maybe tinnitus and a lack of hearing and this weird feeling in this ear is it for good, and just being with that as well and rolling that around a little bit and getting comfortable with it, rather than the whole big drama that can come from it again. Because it isn't great. I was talking to Michael and he said, it's one of these things where you wake up in the morning and as soon as you start, your senses come to, it's the first thing you notice. And you imagine that, you wake up and it's just like, oh, there we go. There's a ringing in my ear and my ear feels weird. And that's your greeting to the day. And it's just being with that. And as I say, I think there are so many tools you can use for it. And when I think of the literally billions of people on the planet who are incredibly worse off in so many horrendous situations, who would give anything to be a person who's got a bit of ringing in their ears and some discomfort. I always find stuff like that really helps to shift things into perspective. And it's just really about, I think for me, personally is making sure that I have those tools and that awareness, because it's very easy for worries me and oh poor me to creep into people's lives. And I think having those tools, and another one which works really well for me that might be useful for people, one of my core values is kindness and compassion. It really lights me up being kind and compassionate and helping other people. It kind of makes sense of what we do at FMM. And that's another great way of looking at this and saying, okay, so, how can I use this or my behavior towards this in order to be kind and compassionate to other people? So yes, there's jumping on the podcast, but there's also, if I'm sitting there complaining and bemoaning what's going on, in what way am I contributing to other people? And the answer to that is I'm not. So whilst, as I say, it's great, it's important to process emotions, it's that story, it's that inner bully, it's back to that conversation again of how we show up. Because I can choose to say, okay, yeah, all right, I'm feeling down and I can be with that, but what could I do? What one thing can I do to help someone else? And it invariably helps to lift me up. And I think it does for most people. It's pretty solid advice for people when you're feeling down and low and in a bit of a rut, is to ask yourself, how could I help, be of assistance to another person when there's nothing in it for me in return? And that's kind of an important part to it. What could I do for charity? What could I do for a neighbor? What could I do for somebody where I don't get anything on the flip side that kind of helps raise your spirits? It's not why you're doing it, but ultimately that giving and living for other people is incredibly self-fulfilling as well. So I think moving forward, kind of the next stage for me, absolutely, I'll be operating from a place as though this is going to get fixed. But if it doesn't, making sure I've got a toolkit there that helps me to stay upbeat, still be a positive force for good, and not sort of get sucked down and make something worse than in reality it really is,
Yeah. Yeah, that's it. I mean, taking our experiences and hopefully making things a little bit easier for other people that may be moving into similar experiences.
Absolutely. So talking about that, Rob, I think we're pretty much at the end of the episode. That was most of what I wanted to share. Talking about helping other people, what have we got coming up soon, Rob?
We have the FMM Finish More Music workshop.
We do. The Finish More Music Blueprint, absolutely. So this one is coming up on the 21st of April, so super, super soon now. And the promise of the workshop, super simple. You will walk away with a proven workflow. In fact, this is a free workshop that Rob has taken himself. You'll walk away with a proven workflow, one that I've taught thousands and thousands of people. That guarantees you finish every single track you start. And I think the really important part as well is you see consistent leveling up in the quality of your skill set and the music that you're putting out. And it's something we're massively passionate about. Rob's hugely involved, Tara from my team, Mrs. M as well. The whole team absolutely loves doing this because we get to help and aid music producers sort of in the wider ecosystem, if you like. So you have to be a member of FMM to be a part of this. We get to help as many people as we possibly can. We put it on, it's around 10 days. Don't quote me on that. I'll get a beating. So I'm never good with the details of these things, as most people know. And it comes with a complete piece of training, which is like a highly produced video series, live training sessions with me, coaching, input and help from my team. You get a whole bunch of downloads, workbooks, roadmaps, processes, and it's very much an active workshop. So rather than it just being passive and you get more and more information, which I think most people are kind of massively overwhelmed with stuff already, you actually put the information into use. You follow along as we do it. We've got an exclusive private Facebook group for this as well that you can get involved in. It's finishmoremusic.com/waitlist. So jump on it now. Because we put so much into it, we can only do this once a year. So if this is something that sounds like you want to be involved in, you want to level up your output in the studio, maybe you've hit a plateau with your music, you want to start improving the quality, perhaps getting a bit frustrated with it, procrastinator, perfectionist, self-doubt, overthinker, all of those different things, it is designed specifically to help you move forward, rather than say, oh, well, it won't work for me because of this. Spin that on its head. It will work for you specifically because of that. It's the other way around. So we've got that coming up, finishmoremusic.com/waitlist. We've got some pretty big interviews coming up as well on the podcast, haven't we, Rob? I'm not going to say who it is just yet, but they're pretty good, aren't they?
Yeah, of course. Always good ones.
Big names, some big names. So make sure you subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss out. We'll send you a notification as soon as those episodes are out, and they're coming up very, very soon. Other than that, show notes are where, Mr. Rob Nicholson?
The show notes will be on the webpage, finishmoremusic.com/podcast.
There we go. Look at that. He's on the money. Brilliant stuff. And I do want to just extend this to anyone as well. If you're struggling with your ears, you've got anything going on and you want to like jam this out at all, you want to talk to me, do hit me up on Instagram at I am Keith Mills. I'd love to hear from you. I know that this is it's a pretty tricky situation because you're walking around pretty much conscious of it all the time unless you're engaged in something else. And I totally get it. It can be pretty scary. I'm feeling that from time to time as well. A wave of it kind of comes over me. So if you want to jam about it, or if you've got any ideas, anything that's really helped you, do let me know, because I'll share it on the podcast so that other people can learn and benefit from it as well. Other than that, I think that's us, is it, Mr. Nicholson?
I think we're good, yeah.
DJ Rob, thank you very much. Amazing company as always, my friend.
Thank you
thanks for listening, and until next time, take care and happy music making.